A number of months ago, I did a video where I talked about a personal favorite game from my childhood, rather than my usual discussion about Fallout. It was a very obscure one called Jade Cocoon, a monster catcher where you can merge creatures together. Today, I want to discuss something else, a God game where you, quite literally, play God. Let's talk about Black and White. So, Black and White is one of the many God games out there. In these, you may, though not always, play the role of a powerful figure able to manipulate the world around you in various ways, usually with a touch of life simulation. It was released in 2001 by Lionhead Studios, who would eventually release Fable. The game drew heavy inspiration from a prior game by Lionhead Studios founder Peter Molyneux, Populous, another game about playing God and considered one of the most significant in the genre. Black and White received extremely high praise, winning both excellent reviews and awards, along with nominations for a variety of categories. Today, it stands as one of the most requested titles to come to good old games, along with its sequel, so it's not exactly a hidden gem, but I do think its limitation of availability does mean the younger crowd may not know much about it, and it's hard to get legally. Like Jade Cocoon, it's pretty expensive to buy a CD copy. I'll discuss its gameplay, atmosphere and aesthetics, its narrative, its expansion, and give some final thoughts. Let's begin. As said, there's plenty of God games out there, but in Black and White, the divinity is turned up. You're a god represented by a single holy hand on the screen. You oversee a tribe of worshippers, can cast miracles to strengthen your influence among your people, and take over the religious following of other civilizations to expand your realm even further. You get a starting village on each map, and have lots of followers you can assign specific tasks to, otherwise they'll just choose jobs that are available or piddle around. This could be a disciple woodcutter, disciple farmer, to even a disciple breeder. As funny as it is to make villagers have regular sex in your praise, it's actually pretty important. See, this game follows the trope of prayer being power for gods. Naturally, the bigger your population, the more followers you have, and the more followers you have, the more prayer you can get. You can get this prayer by building up a worship site and allowing your villagers to dance around and praise your name. Raise the totem and the flock runs to it. But the more people you have, the more needs they have. Food is obviously important, especially for worshippers, homes for the people to live in, etc. There's a bounty of needs all displayed at the storehouse of the town. And when these needs are not met, the less people will believe in you. You can lose towns due to that, sometimes to a rival god. But it really hurts to lose a town, since you can only do things within your range of influence, bar a few seconds you have just outside this ring. But it's important to note that your range of influence is tied to both town population and the buildings at the edge of your influence. The gameplay loop is essentially expand your village to get more people to get prayer power so you can cast miracles and perform divine activity to influence your religion over various other towns. Capture these other towns to expand your ring of influence and build up enough influence to destroy any rival god's temple. I'll discuss more about rival gods later. Getting the people to believe in you could take a number of forms. Miraculously filling up a town storehouse with food, showering the trees, healing the people, but you don't always have to be a good god. You can rain fire upon their houses, strike them down with lightning, or summon a pack of wolves to eat them alive. Indeed, you could be a good or evil god, which will shape the look of your hand, as well as your temple. Either a shining beacon of altruism or a demonic realm of villainy. I'm sure some of my viewers may appreciate this feature. Karma is something loved in the Fallout series, but given its Lionhead, it should not be that surprising. This same system was adapted to Fable. Regardless, the more prayer power is used, the more prayer power is needed. I already mentioned having worshippers at the site, but that's a slow stream of regular points, and worshippers have their own needs. And the more you try to capture a town using miracles, the faster you blow through these points, and need a quick shot. You can sacrifice things at the altar. Plants, animals, and villagers. Villager sacrifice is an evil act. So given how much you can burn through while trying to capture a town, it can be very tempting to go to the dark side even when you're playing a good god. Release a flock of winged creatures, throw a fireball at the storehouse, sacrifice a villager. Water their crops, give them wood, sacrifice a villager. Cast lightning at some random person, heal them immediately afterwards, sacrifice a villager. And before you know it, you're an awful, awful god. Of course, as tempting as it may be to take such shortcuts, you don't have to go down this extremely vile path. A god may choose to simply wait for their villagers to produce enough prayer. They can also find dispensers around the world which produce one-shot miracles periodically, and these don't cost any prayer. You can store the miracles around and use them as you see fit. They're useful for saving prayer for more crucial miracles. But even though it's definitely possible to be a good god, it is just really difficult to be one without a lot of free time. Maybe there's a point in that. Easier to be evil than good. Regardless, once a village is captured and that village's worship altar is made, the village's associated miracles will become available at that site. Remember that each altar have their own pools of prayer. Sticking to the subject of miracles, you can activate them in a couple of ways. Either by drawing the miracle symbol on the ground, with some being more tedious to make than others, or grabbing them at the worship site or town center. The drawing method usually works okay for most miracles, like S for food, or the heart for healing, but occasionally you'll get a frustrating one. As obvious as it may be from my gameplay footage, you can interact with the world in a number of direct ways, besides just spells. Picking up a villager and tossing them, ripping out trees and storing them as lumber, chopping boulders in half and dropping them on houses. Speaking of houses, there's an element of city building to this. There's the scaffold system, which is a bit of a clunky way of handling it. But Lionhead discouraged the use of menus and wanted the game to be as in-world as possible. You can build a variety of constructions by stacking scaffolds and putting them on suitable locations. A ghost of the building you want to create pops up and rotates. Click when you're ready and it's time for your people to develop the new structure. These can be homes, more workshops, storehouses, farms, civic buildings, or a powerful wonder. Said wonders largely affect the strength of miracles, but also give other buffs, like faster villager movement. Not vital, but certainly useful. Now, definitely, one of the more beloved aspects is something you can directly influence, but acts on its own. It's the creature, a giant pet you can teach, strengthen, and grow to a massive size. In many respects, it acts as your divine familiar. You can think of them as your agent, a titan that represents your holiness, an avatar. Though that's not entirely accurate for all of them, there are wild creatures out there, godless ones, and creatures trained by humans, as well as beasts such as ogres that act like creatures. Though in lore, most creatures belong or once belonged to gods. You can manipulate your creature's behavior, encouraging them to perform a number of tasks, such as petting them when they pick up a human to eat a villager, or slapping them to discourage it. This is true for a variety of actions. If you want your creatures to sleep at night, pet it for doing so, or slap them if they sleep in the day. You can perform miracles in front of them to teach them. This can be really useful if you want a creature to perform some beneficial ones, like miracle food or watering the crops. This is certainly useful as it won't drain from your own pools of prayer. Once learned, be sure to pet them when they perform such miracles to encourage it more often. You can send your creature out to other villages to act out on their own, or even square up with rival creatures. If either dies, they simply respawn after a while in their pen. And it should be noted that there's plenty of creatures you can choose from. There's the starting 3, ape, cow, and tiger, but also more later, such as the horse, brown bear, and my personal favorite, the tortoise. Swapping a creature gives the properties of your old creature to the new one. These creatures have their own alignments separate from their gods, but you can encourage good or evil behavior, which morphs their look in fairly drastic ways. A more mild way to alter their appearance is to deck them out in tattoos, which is handled at your temple. It not only houses the creature cave, where you can look at a variety of stats for your creature, but there's plenty of rooms to explore, including the save and loading room, the room to access the game's menu, and even a library to view basic hints and tips. This is an idea that Lionhead would kind of repeat later in Fable 3. But really, the temple is very important to the game. It's the symbol of the god, their life force, and has a presence throughout every single level. Every god needs it. What a god doesn't really need but can be helpful are all the side quests. Little distractions, usually puzzles or minigames. Most aren't entirely vital to your progression in the main quest, though they can help, a lot actually. You get rewards depending on if you complete a quest, and sometimes how you complete it, usually good or evil. Sometimes a quest can unlock a miracle at a village. One quest may give a really useful miracle dispenser, maybe a creature. Other times might not really be anything special at all. Rewards vary. This is a really old game. It's very blocky, which may impact some of the views new players could have. You can still generally tell what everything is. Horses have a horse shape, wolves have a wolf shape, and humans are apparent enough to be able to make out. But still, the game certainly has a lot of visuals that give away the datedness of it. But even with that, it does have its charms. Music has a variety of flavors that all speak to a spiritual level, whether it's through the trippy intro, the chants of the villagers when giving you worship, or the dreamy sequence when a villager asks you to perform godly actions for the mini side quests.
Excuse me, powerful being. I need your help.
Like the graphical features of your hand and temple, music will also change depending on if you're good, neutral, or evil. Each piece gives out the fantastical vibe it needs, even watching a giant tortoise spin kick a lion. It really is a lot more hype than it has any right to be. So there's a lot of characters. Most of them are unimportant quest givers. But even with that, there's a few who really stand out, such as the traveling missionaries, who want you to finish their boat, give them food so they can travel the world and spread your holy name, but not before getting their song stuck in your head for weeks.
Oh, we got this notion that we quite like to sail the ocean, so we're building a big boat to leave here for good. We're not keen on sinking, so we're all sitting here thinking, cause we built it too big and we've run out of wood.
Or the yogi who you need to sneak follow and will frustrate you by having you restart each time you get caught, though there's thankfully a checkpoint system. Then there's the other gods in the world. There's about 3 of them, besides yourself, one being the primary antagonist. They're all represented as balls of light flying around the world with a symbol on it. The same is likely true for you. A red god, given your ring's influence color, with whatever symbol you choose at the beginning of the game. This lack of body look certainly sells the otherworldly ticket and is probably atypical to what one might think of when a god is considered. It certainly works for a gameplay perspective anyway, a god that flies around the world map. What is more traditional is your conscience.
Greetings, we're your conscience. Good and evil. Yin and yang. Black and white. As part of you, we'll guide you through this world.
A cliche angel and devil that sits upon your shoulders, or in this case, monitor, both promoting different methods of completing a task, usually destructiveness for the evil conscience and helpfulness for the good.
Hey, I got a plan. Why don't we trash the house? We can get the gate stone that way. I heartily object. That's just malicious. Well, that's kind of the whole point.
Interestingly, neither are lying to you, nor will they attempt to stop an action despite disagreements they may have with whatever you choose. Ultimately, both want you to become a powerful god that rules the lands, but they have different ideas for how to approach it, and usually the evil conscience is bloodthirsty, but even he may condemn having worshippers exhausting themselves to death at a worship site.
How dumb is this? People are dying at the worship site.
Depending on which Bart plays. They'll engage in humorous banter, act as tutorial guides for a number of elements, and give advice and tips throughout the game. Because of that, the good and evil conscience are the most common characters you'll see on the screen. They're thankfully fairly likable. So, I'll be honest, the actual lore of the game isn't exactly deep, but it's serviceable. The game starts off in a fairly peaceful world, Eden, where humans live rather harmoniously. It's a bit of an alternative to Earth, as all the tribes are named after real-life societies: Greeks, Norse, Egyptian, Japanese, Aztec. Yet, despite that, every place is pretty much a small island. A tiny family walks to the beach, the parents hug, the child runs out to the water and swims with some sharks. The parents pray for a god, and that births you in the earlier stated, rather trippy intro. You save the kid and the family instantly bows to your divinity. This is where you meet your conscience, good and evil. Turns out the whole village has been waiting for a new god, due to a prophecy. You go through a number of tutorials, meet the creature trainer, Sable, complete a few quests, and get a creature, and do more tutorial stuff with that creature. Now this is perhaps where I should lay down the spoiler warning. Here is a time of this segment where I'll go through the plot, including major points such as the ending. It will remain on screen in the upper right hand corner until the segment is finished. But if you want to try this game out and don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead. So a giant creature, a lot more massive than your own, the creature guide, wishes to meet you and your buddy. Using telepathy, he trains you in creaturing beyond what Sable could teach you. He'll then try to teach you about the game's MacGuffins, the 3 creeds, which is apparently supposed to give a god extensive amount of power. The creature guide's former master, Nemesis, comes along and silences his old pet. Nemesis proceeds to start raining hell upon your village, a portal is open, and you could toss several people, miracles, resources, whatever into the portal, and go to the next island. As a side note, this portal system is true for each level, and you could take whatever you toss in there with you into the next land. It's actually kind of a lot of fun, but an influx of humans may bring in some challenges to the next island. Too many mouths to feed, not enough food. Anyway, at the second island, you meet Khazar, a good god and ally to you. He's fighting against Lethis, an ally to Nemesis. He saved you in the hopes that you could assist him. The first half of the island is also a bit of a tutorial, but with more freedom. After you take over the first village with Khazar's help, it's where the game starts to really pick up and show itself for what it is. And while Khazar saved you hoping you could help him defeat Lethis, there's really nothing stopping you from being a dick and taking over his towns.
Your behavior is inexplicable.
Either way, after you get so far into the island, Nemesis comes along, destroys Khazar and his creature. Turns out Khazar's creature had a creed in it, which Lethis takes. After you get farther along, Lethis assumes control of your creature, and he and his creatures escape to the next land. The third level is really where the difficulty gets ramped up a bit, if only due to the distance of the towns. Your creature is captured and being tortured, and you'll need to take towns to get him back. It'd be helpful to do the Yogi quest prior to taking over the towns, as he'll provide assistance whenever you do convert a village, and Lethis throws you a curveball. Right before completing this land, Lethis surrenders, opens a portal to the next island, and you get the first creed. He asks you to spare him. Your choice doesn't really matter much except fulfilling your desires. You go to the next land. It's the first one, except really crappy. Fire raining down from the sky, gremlins constantly raiding your village to drag humans off to do whatever unspeakable things to them, a blood red sky, and a village forced to become the living dead. Really, it's just a terrible place to start a family. So you're gonna set up a new village here. All of these are curses that Nemesis brought to your original island, and you'll need to break them. Primarily, you're going to want to break the fireball curse because it's the one doing the most damage. Then you can take care of each one until you deal with the undead village. Breaking their curse, they'll tell you where the next creed is. Turns out, it was with the creature guide. Go to his remains, grab the creed, and Nemesis will open the last portal to his domain, saying that you two are the last gods left, suggesting Nemesis destroyed Lethis even if you chose to spare him. So you're not going to get any kind of assistance from that guy. Now, on the final level, you may get an extra starting village if you chose to help the singing missionaries on Land 1, which is cool. They even have a wonder built up. Speaking of wonders, Nemesis will greet you saying he's the opposite alignment of whatever you are.
Once I destroy you, every living creature in Eden will worship me, Nemesis, the embodiment of good.
He curses your creature, and you need to capture his towns. He'll destroy the wonders of each town, which breaks the curse bit by bit on your creature. Once you finally get to him and take his last village, he has his creature copy yours, with the opposite alignment of it. You'll get into a long fight with the creature, and once you win, Nemesis claims he's not done yet, and will constantly come back. The good conscience states that you have the final third creed. If you notice, there's been a pattern. It's been inside the creatures. You need to waltz yours up to a volcano to get the final creed, basically sacrificing him. Strangely, it doesn't actually kill him, but you get the creed, Nemesis is destroyed. You're the only god left in the world. Win-win. There's really only one expansion to this game. It's Creature Isle, and it's different really. The gameplay is about the same, at least on the surface, but the objectives are fairly different. In a lot of ways, it takes the less interesting parts of the base experience, the side quests and minigames, and really makes that the focal point, and it's kind of exhausting. It can be boring and mundane with sheep herding, which is very time consuming, or bowling or racing, almost all with your usually uncooperative creature. Most of the side quests in the base game worked well because it acted as a usually optional way to break up the main experience at will. And here, that becomes the focal point, and it's just not as fun. Sure, there's some enjoyment from being a cheating god and blocking your rival from winning, but it doesn't really serve the expansion well, and it's honestly just more frustrating than it is fun. One interesting aspect is the fact that your creature can have a pet on its own, a freshly hatched baby chicken creature. So it's kind of more of a parent-to-child relationship, but either case is not as fun or even as useful as you'd expect. In a way, the expansion acts like a sequel to the main game. Missionaries landed on the isle to spread news of your grace. You play the same profile with the same god, and your creature has the same stats. And you can meet a brotherhood of godless creatures that band together in unison for support. But honestly, it's not a terrible loss to miss out on, and it's kinda not that fun to begin with. I'm sure there's people out there that love Creature Isle, but personally, I think it took the more tedious parts of the base game and made that the focus. Creature Isle aside, Black and White is a lot of fun. It had excellent scoring and is one of those old games a lot of people likely have fond memories of playing as a child, if they grew up in the early 2000s. I, myself, was well into adulthood and college when I played its sequel for the first time, and then went back to play this. Its sequel is another game I plan to discuss. I love Black and White, and while this game isn't particularly as well known to most players as some other games, it's one of those that I feel should be tried if they're able to. If not this one, it's much easier sequel. The sequel is probably a better entry point for the series due to that ease. The original's age holds it back a bit to a new audience due to its graphics, bugs, and gameplay feels a bit clunky in some aspects. Nevertheless, if you're able to get a copy of the game and want to try, I encourage it. Do look up fan patches. I'll leave a link to a solid patch guide in the description. There's also one mod to increase the rendering distance, which is not available for Creature Isle. But given how Creature Isle plays, it's probably understandable why no one really bothered. Regardless, out of the God games I played, this and its sequel are among the best experiences. It's really the only game series I touch where I felt like a divine being with spectacular power to rule over a domain with. If you want to play good, play bad, and play God, it's a definite game to consider. And a special thanks to my channel members, especially my members thrice over guys like the Crazy Game Developer and Danny McPhee. If you want to support me and join us well, I'd be more than happy. Also, feel free to join my Discord server and chat with us. Thank you. Have a good one.